Shannon, I think we can go ahead and get started. We'll be good stewards of everyone's time today and get started pretty close to noon because I know we've got a lot to cover. So welcome. Thanks everyone for attending. We are recording this, so we'll be sharing the recording after our session. You'll see a Q&A down at the bottom. If you would submit questions as we go, Shannon and I will be monitoring the Q&A. Allie and Joey and Rachel, who you'll see in the chat. If there's some questions in the chat, they can move them over for you. But just to kind of streamline where we're looking for questions, if you wouldn't mind using the Q&A. But thank you so much for being here. I'm Missy Hurley. I'm CEO of B2 Communications, and I'm joined by Shannon. Shannon, would you please introduce yourself?
Yes, hello. I'm an account director here at B2, and this is our second quarterly webinar. Great to be here.
We're excited to have a great turnout today, and I know that we've had a few people who reached out who said that they couldn't quite make the right time, so they'll be checking it out afterward. So who is B2 Communications? So we are a client-focused public relations agency. We take a strategic approach to impactful messaging, media relations, and reputation management. And we're working with regional and national clients. Our specialty is B2B communications and also a bit more complex topics. We have a bit of an expertise in really taking difficult to understand subject matter and getting it into sound bites and into language that can be understood by target audiences. So we really enjoy working with B2B clients on communications, obstacles, opportunities, and challenges. So today we are talking about leadership because it's something that we keep hearing from our clients about what is thought leadership? How can I make thought leadership work for me? And are we doing it right? So we've been working with a few different clients, particularly over the past year, to develop thought leadership matrices and to implement thought leadership campaigns. And as we were talking about what to do for our next webinar, we thought this would be a great topic because we keep hearing it come up time and time again, particularly questions like why do my competitors keep getting quoted, or we do this much better, or we've got a different take on this, but they keep getting in the spotlight. How do we position our experts and our leaders in the areas where they have expertise, knowledge, and insights to share? So we're excited to dive into the topic with you today. And as a reminder, just drop your questions into the chat as we go.
So I think the biggest question to address first really is just what is thought leadership? It's become kind of a buzzword. But in its most basic, it's really just an authoritative voice that's providing expertise and perspective within a given industry or field. So it doesn't always need to be an executive of a company. It could just be someone with a great deal of expertise and experience that has a voice to share and has a perspective to provide to people. But what it does is it really serves to differentiate you and your company from your competitors, but also it's that earned validation, that it's not something that you just go out and you buy. This is all about being recognized externally for your expertise and that you're bringing something more to the table than just a product, but really that you're leading through your insights and perspective. So there are a lot of different pieces to thought leadership and reasons to get involved in thought leadership. It's ultimately helping you raise and build your visibility, both for the professional thought leaders, those subject matter experts, but also for your brand. So you're going to be elevating your brand awareness when you have a very vocal expert and spokesperson who's sharing knowledge and attracting attention. And this is also a fantastic way to engage your audience because you're creating compelling content that people not only want to read, but that they can utilize, that they can factor into their own day-to-day lives. You become not just a voice, but you become a resource. And that's really looking at how you end up charting industry trends. The insight of a thought leader, the expertise that is shared, really starts to set the agenda for industry trends. And that thought leader then starts to become that go-to request for input, for validation on certain points. And it's not so much of a pushing out ideas, but really people start coming to you. So that there's a big difference in being a notable thought leader than just being an effective spokesperson per se.
How does it look when thought leadership is executed well? So these are 3 examples of op-eds. We were working with Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council, which was hosting a resiliency summit. So they were bringing together about 500 people on Clearwater Beach to talk about resiliency strategies that can help the entire Bay Area, but we're attracting national attention. So there were people coming in from outside the Tampa Bay community to learn what's going well and what are our challenges. So a conference is one way to establish credibility. It can be, time consuming and expensive to produce. And the challenge with the conference, in addition to the expense and the manpower required to put it together, is a lot of the thought leadership is contained into the walls of the conference. So only the people who are there are able to understand what's being said and hear from those thought leaders. So we worked with Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council to bring that expertise out into the conversation through news media. So we worked with 2 of their elected officials, one in Sarasota and another one in St. Petersburg, to write some op-eds to address some of the biggest issues facing our region. So in Manatee County or in Sarasota, we were talking about Hurricane Ian's impact on the region and how we were still feeling the effects 6 months later. On the flip side, in St. Petersburg, we were talking about the rising cost of housing insurance and just the rising cost of insurance as a whole, but what insurance regulators were or were not able to get done. So really trying to take what was going to be discussed inside the walls of those conference and bring it out into setting the agenda of the conversation outside of those conference walls. So we had some of those published in advance of the conference and then a few published after the conference to continue that conversation and to showcase the expertise from the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council and their leaders. So in terms of how does that work for B2B? So the example I just gave you was resiliency. So a little bit more complex topic. There was some application to B2B, but for B2B companies, what can thought leadership do for you? And it's really an opportunity to enhance that credibility, position the company and its experts as trusted advisors on those topics. It's also an opportunity to build strong relationships built on expert advice and tips. We're big fans of tip-based columns, news you can use. So increasing trust in the organization and its leaders through that expert advice. And it's also an opportunity for lead generation and closing that lead to sale gap. When you're attracting potential clients who value expertise, who want to be working with people who are top in their field, that's an opportunity for B2B companies. From the lead to sale perspective, it is giving you additional touch points to go out to your sales prospects and showcase your expertise. So part of it is trying to get it out there into areas where you may not have been speaking or published in the past. But then how are you using that through your own channels to highlight the company's expertise? So we're going to be walking through all of that, but wanted to keep in mind how we're earning credibility and trust for B2B companies through thought leadership. So taking a look at an example for Valley Bank, which is a regional bank that focuses quite a bit on commercial lending. And we look at these two examples, Shannon, if you'll bring in the other example, one in Orlando and one in the Florida market, both of these are in the Florida market. We kind of look at these as like the holy grail for thought leadership. One of these was editorial. The newsroom was having a conversation about the most influential people. And Joe Chilera rose to the top of the list because of consistent communication about his expertise when it comes to banking. Same for Lynetta. I'll let Shannon talk a little bit about how Lynetta's came about, but it was really a dedicated effort over several years to highlight her profile. So Shannon, if you want to dig a little bit deeper into kind of the hows and whys these came about.
Yes. And, both of these people, we've got one of the Valley's executive leadership members with Joe Chilora. He's been in the market for a long time. He has founded other banks, and he's just developed a strong relationship with the community over the year. But through, consistent efforts on Valley's side of positioning him as a thought leader, putting him in front of, round tables when there's opportunity to comment on those higher level trends and market overviews. He is a person that is now seen as a resource. If we're talking about banking in this region, he is a primary voice. And that is one of the reasons, working with him, particularly with the publication, this was something that the Business Journal had put out, working with those key contacts and positioning him as a consistent resource, ended up in the editorial team opting to include him in this like power list. So end goal, great to be in there, but there was a lot of steps that led to him being included in that list. And the same for Lynetta, who has been involved in her market for a while and has been involved in boards and is another person that we position as that higher level thought leadership, offering perspectives on economic topics, banking trends. She's someone that has been offered up to not just publications, but is also a speaker within the community. We submitted her for awards for a while before she was selected as one of these women in business key movers. And this was an end goal, I think, of just consistent work, but it also shows both of these thought leaders, these are earned and they have the goods to back it up. And that's, it's positioning all of that hard work that your thought leaders put into their profession, their industry, their communities, that really yields the communities responding and saying, yes, these people are leaders. So just as far as creating thought leadership, you've seen the end goal being your key spokesperson, your subject matter expert is not just a spokesperson, isn't just sharing messaging, but they're sharing their insight on a very high level. They're starting to get awards and they're getting recognized as resources. But how do you get there? We're going to share how some of the key steps to actually create the thought leadership for your brand. So what makes thought leadership? It is not just a spokesperson. Having the ability to speak on message, while very important, thought leadership goes beyond that because you're offering unique insights. And this is going to be looking at offering original perspectives and solutions. So not just commenting on what already has been and kind of going in line with, marketing messaging, but really thinking a little bit higher, going that next level up and saying how this is impacting the greater landscape. It's offering the expertise. This is not, you're new to the market, you're going to come out as a thought leader. you have to have some expertise and experience to back that up. You have to demonstrate deep knowledge, and you need to be able to then share that. And then it really comes down to, I know when we think about content, the question in marketing, especially, and even communications goes quality versus quantity. With thought leadership, quality is crucial. You have to be producing high quality, very informative, and very value-driven content. So things that you can offer to your audience, to your readers, to your listeners, to actually put into use and apply to their day-to-day lives. So just as an example of what this kind of thought leadership could look like, this would be if you have like a state of the industry report that a particular brand provides, where they're combining unique data from within their brand, but then they're also taking that additional step and providing some analysis. They're giving you some key insights that really is meant to not necessarily be a hard sell product, but that's really meant to more help the professionals in that industry understand market trends and stay ahead in their jobs. So it goes beyond just a request to review something or to purchase something, but is really driving a higher level value to a larger range of people.
So who can be subject matter experts or SMEs? It's kind of a natural tendency for us to think about the leader of an organization, a CEO, to be that subject matter expert, but they shouldn't be your one and only expert and leader. There's CEO transitions, for business continuity reasons and marketplace branding, and it's important to have a deeper bench. So then we start to take a look at who else maybe on the C-suite could serve as an expert in their field. But some of my favorite areas to look are the people who are on the front lines, who are in the nitty gritty doing the work. So if you're in a nonprofit, it might be your program managers. If you're in a corporation that's in the technology or science field, maybe it is your development team. What are they building next? Why are they doing it? In the science or resiliency realm, it might be your chief science officer. It's the people who are getting really nitty gritty into the work, and your job as a PR professional or communicator is to help them understand how to communicate that for the wider perspective. Another one that we can look toward is external consultants. So that might be industry experts, that might be people on your board. For example, the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council, we leaned heavily on their board as external consultants who had quite a bit of knowledge about the organization and its work and a natural tie to it. So really getting a little bit broader in your thinking about who could be your subject matter expert. And as you're doing that analysis of who it might be, taking a look if you don't feel like you've got a deep enough bench inside, or maybe they don't have quite the credibility yet that you're going to work to build, you can look at influential partners. And I always shudder a little bit when we talk influencers. So that's not who we're talking about, but maybe it's people in that realm. So it might be a partner, it might be an analyst, it might be an academic researcher, or it might be a publication or a media publishing company that can help you carry your message with credibility and has a bit of reach already. So that might look like co-authoring a white paper or a trend report with an analyst firm, or taking a look at some academic research that would support your claim about what you're doing. So really getting a bit more creative and looking at a deeper bench about who could be our subject matter experts, because you're going to want a little bit of variety, both for scheduling purposes and personality purposes, to see who's going to be the best fit to carry forward which messages. So it kind of starts with taking a close look inside and nearby the organization to see who could you tap as a subject matter expert. And then once you find your subject matter experts, how do you maximize them? We want to fully leverage their expertise. So it might be going pretty deep with them to understand, what are they looking at? Where do they look for information? What sort of trends and data are they researching as they give advice to the organization about where to go next? and really trying to understand what is their baseline knowledge and where do you need to work with them to help them hone their skills, which is the next step. We want to provide them with training so that they feel confident stepping into the spotlight. For subject matter experts who are pretty much in the nitty gritty, your job is really going to be polishing and honing their skills for presentation. How do they get comfortable providing sound bites? How do they get a little bit more comfortable not just looking behind them at the data that's already happened, but really looking forward and saying, here's what I forecast for the market, because that may not come naturally to them, but really helping them connect the dots between the data and knowledge that they have today and how do we position that as thought leadership in an external marketplace. Also developing some consistent messaging. So going through your message themes and helping to make sure that all of your content aligns with the brand voice and values, and that it's all working together within your overall communications and marketing campaign. And probably the most important point on this slide is collaboration. It's going to take a lot of collaboration with your subject matter experts, with your leadership team, and with your own internal marketing and PR team to ensure that everyone knows what the plan is, that they know what the goals are, and that everyone's working together, particularly with your subject matter experts, working alongside them to produce factually accurate, but also very insightful and helpful tip-based content. So making sure that you're maximizing them by taking those 4 steps.
So there's obviously a lot of pieces we've just reviewed on, the benefits and what thought leadership can do. And thank you to those who have already started putting questions in the Q&A section. And I think a lot of the questions I'm even starting to see is really like, how do you do this? So we're going to give you we're going to look at strategy. We always like looking at the strategy, but we're going to give you some 4 key steps to get going and to see your thought leadership campaigns through. So first step is assessment. It's important to know where you are and what you have to work with before you can actually lay out your plans. But the big question that you have to ask yourself is, what do you and your company want to be known for? Before you can identify even a thought leader, you have to understand what is it that you really want to develop a reputation around? What expertise is going to be needed in order to make that happen? So identifying key areas, determining those topics that align with your overarching business goals is the first step. This can look like conversations with executives. This can look like a deep dive into your marketing and communications plans, as well as just your overall business plans. But you have to have a direction and know where you're going in order to start putting your plan in place. Once you understand generally what the topics are that you're going to be focusing on, then you have to evaluate resources because, surprise, surprise, thought leadership does require resources. It's kind of like when people ask about social media, they want to be a social media influencer. Similar to thought leadership, you're going to have to invest some resources. You're either going to invest a lot of time or you're going to invest some financial, or you're going to have to invest in some additional team members. There's a lot of options that you can evaluate, but just figuring out what you have available. As Missy said earlier, it's good to start reviewing internally, seeing what you have available to you, and then looking at where may I need to pull some external expertise. Is that somebody that is going to be, helping train my subject matter experts? Is that going to be people to actually execute part of my strategy? Do you have, just the number of people and those key resources to achieve your goals? From there, we build. You've looked at what you have, you've determined your resources, you have your topics. Now building mode is your next big phase. And this starts with creating a content strategy and setting goals and really developing that plan that's going to allow you to produce and distribute the expertise and insights to your targets. And then making sure, I almost want to put like exclamation points all over this, but we're not gonna do that to you. But imagine exclamation points everywhere. Set measurable goals. This is one of the probably most overlooked that we see on a regular basis, where we have a thought leader, we want to get them out there, but there's never any goals set. And then when it comes to actually deciding whether your thought leadership campaign or initiative is effective, you have nothing to look at. You have no benchmarks. You don't even know, what those goals would be. So setting measurable goals, vastly important. Once you have that, you can start to establish your channels. And this is evaluation. You're going to decide on the most effective platforms for reaching your audience. And both with the content strategy and with the channels, we like to utilize a thought leadership matrix, which puts all of your thought leaders into one sort of overview document and clearly outlines, the topics that they're going to be talking about, but where you're going to leverage them, where you're going to position them as thought leaders. Is it positioning your head of engineering with the more technical trades? Is it taking your CFO and positioning them with maybe more financial and business, high-level business conferences? Maybe you are taking your chief executive officer, and you're putting them on broadcast. You're looking to get them out to really broad ranges of people. Understanding what channels are going to be a good fit is a very crucial part. So including that from the get-go, using that thought leadership matrix and being able to have that available to everybody working on your thought leadership campaign is a crucial step. Missy mentioned training before. Supporting with training is incredibly helpful, but it's not just for your brand, it's also for your thought leaders, because it's a rare instance where you have a subject matter expert who has incredible insights and perspectives, and also is a fantastic writer, an amazing public speaker, and just this dynamic personality who is, posting on their social media every day and sharing their insights freely with the world, perfectly on brand. If you have that person, please drop in the Q&A who that is. I would love to talk to them and just pick their brain. It is like the unicorn of thought leadership. You're going to need to train. You're going to need to provide your subject matter experts with those necessary skills. Maybe they are an absolutely fantastic and effective speaker. Maybe they're very comfortable writing. Maybe they do like to share kind of their commentary on industry happenings in social media. Whatever it might be, fill in the holes with that correct training and support.
Actually, Shannon, we have a question in the Q&A that I'm just going to go ahead and answer. Thank you for dropping it in there. So the question is, how do you pick the right medium or forum, which I think aligns perfectly with what Shannon was talking about with picking the channels. Where do these leaders present their insights, and how do we make sure that the target audience is getting them? And I think that does go back to your overarching goal, having a very clear picture of who your target audience is. I like to do a deep dive into what they're reading, what they're watching, what conferences they go to, what do they hold as sort of their sources of truth, and then figure out, how do we get our subject matter experts in there? Who is it, and what are they saying that's going to attract the attention in those places? So impressions and engagement can absolutely be measured. There's tools that help do that. But I think there can be some tactical more output driven measurables that you can put into your goals, whether that's we want to secure 3 speaking opportunities in the next year, or we want to be producing 1 thought leadership blog post a month that then gets shared out on social. I think some of those tactics really help internal marketing and PR teams stay aligned and stay focused, because we know we've got some check marks we need to cross off. So thank you for that question. Keep them coming in the chat.
Yes,
So
we will.
diving in.
We'll
Oh, go
answer
ahead,
all
Jana.
of them at the end too, but
Yep.
certainly. And also remember, have conversations with your thought leader. Be sure that you know what channels resonate with them and what they're comfortable doing. Just like we said, training. You may not start with putting your thought leaders in front of a massive speaking audience because maybe they need to work up to that. So having the conversations about where they're comfortable is also going to go miles.
And your thought leaders or your subject matter experts can be helpful with that. I think there's sometimes people miss that step of asking your subject matter expert, what are they reading? What are they watching? Where do they see their peers? What would be on their wish list of places where they would see themselves? Helping incorporate that in the plan really helps with that collaboration piece, because they know that you're also tracking to some of their personal and professional goals for themselves, which makes everybody working in alignment much easier. So when we talk about sort of the third step in the 4-step process is implementation. It always sounds way easier than it is, but you've built a fantastic plan. You've gotten that thought leadership matrix in mind. How do you execute the plan? And for me, it is everyone has to know what the plan is. It doesn't do me any good if I'm the only one with the plan and I don't tell Shannon or Joey or Allie or Chris or anyone on my team what the plan is. That puts all the accountability on me. And I need other people to help support me and keep me accountable, and also to help execute different parts and pieces of the plan. So that might be bringing in your content strategists and helping them understand if they're creating content, whether it's a white paper or a blog post or even executive commentary. So if you have a speechwriter on your staff, bringing them into that plan and having a conversation about what we want to see in those talking points. The more people on your team that know the plan, the better, because you're going to have additional resources. Everybody's going to be rowing in the same direction. And that also includes your social media team. Don't leave them off on an island, bring them into the conversation, because they're going to be really helpful for the next point, which is engaging with your audiences. So as you're executing the plan, you want to see how are your target audiences? How is it resonating? Is it fostering discussion? Are you being responsive to feedback you're receiving? Are you starting to build a community or a community of people who trust you? One of the things that we probably don't talk enough about with thought leadership is you have to have a perspective. You have to have an insight. You ideally should not be sharing the same information that 10 of your competitors are sharing. That some of the insights that you're going to be sharing might be contrary to popular opinion, or you might be looking at what all your competitors are talking about with an industry trend, and you're sort of sitting in the office going, I'm seeing something completely different, or they're missing the main point. That those are the insights you should be sharing through thought leadership. But because you're going against the grain, I think acknowledging that you might ruffle a couple feathers. And that's actually a good thing. That means that you're making progress in your thought leadership strategy. I also know that's terrifying for a lot of people who are in corporate communications, to know that you might be inviting a little bit of controversy. But controversy is getting attention, and it's starting the conversation, and it's sharing an alternate viewpoint. It doesn't always mean that it's bad. It just means that you have a viewpoint that's different than others. And when we're talking media relations, if you've got 10 experts who are all saying the same thing, you're competing with 10 others to be a part of that story. If you're the one going, hey, I'm spotting something that no one else is, and I'd like to talk about it, I almost guarantee you that that reporter is going to call you back immediately and go, tell me more. I want to know what the differing perspective is, and that you're going to make it into that story. So I think making sure that it is well researched, it's not just a wild hair attention grab or a PR stunt. We're not a fan of those. But, if you've got some industry expertise, you've got some data, you've got a white paper, you've got, kind of your arsenal of facts behind you to support what you're saying, that is perfect for thought leadership. But you're going to want to make sure that as you're sharing it out, that your audiences are understanding it. And it might require that you're tweaking a little bit along the way of how you're presenting that information or how you're breaking that information down for your audiences so that it can be digestible, that it can be understood, and that people are understanding what your unique perspective is. Which kind of brings us to the next point, which is making adjustments along the way. While I'd love to say that the plan that you build with a thought leadership matrix is going to hold for a year and a half, in reality, you're going to have to make some adjustments. And that's okay to know that it's flexible and fluid and that you should be looking at it. That's the important part of the rest of the team knowing what the plan is, that you guys should be getting together to talk about it. Whether it's, hey, this isn't landing the way that we thought it was going to, and we need to adjust our approach to it, or we were looking in the wrong places. And maybe instead of media opportunities, we need to be pursuing industry conferences, or surprise, our subject matter expert is really great on podcasts, or they're great on longer form. How do we explore that a little bit more to make sure that you're matching up your subject matter expert's strengths with the opportunities and the channels that work? So knowing that it should be a constant process to evaluate and adjust how you're tracking your progress, how you're measuring toward your success metrics set by your goals, and that you're making adjustments along the way, and that you're talking about that as a group and within the organization. One pitfall that we sometimes see is maybe the PR and marketing team is talking about adjustments, but we forget to tell that subject matter expert that we've made a change in the strategy. So as you're changing strategy or you're changing channels, make sure you're going back to your subject matter experts and explaining why you're making those changes. Maybe you're seeing some things bubble up on social media conversation. Maybe your sales team is using some of those expert insights and they're not quite landing with prospects the way you thought they were going to. Making sure that they're full circle conversations throughout the organization can help you make the right adjustments to optimize those.
So this is all well and good. Now comes the glorious time where we talk about expectations, because we know that this sounds fantastic and you may want to start tomorrow. You may want to have started a week ago and you're wondering, all right, well, how long until my key person, my key subject matter expert is getting called by the Wall Street Journal? That's a common one that we hear. But we do have some guidelines for you, because this is not an overnight situation. This is going to take continuous improvement. As Missy mentioned in the last section, it's optimizing on a regular basis. It's utilizing training programs. It's tracking industry changes. It's improving some of those core skills and refining and pivoting and knowing where you need to make those optimizations. And that does not happen overnight. This ultimately, we included this back in the beginning of the presentation. This is a trust building situation. And as a human, if you think about how long it would take you to start trusting a person, a brand, you're looking at weeks and months and maybe even longer. And this is, we're not saying that you won't have some short-term wins, but this is an ongoing effort that's going to have a series of kind of touch points in order to build that long-term credibility and trust. So you can react to this if you'd like, but timelines look a little bit like this. There is some short-term benefits and wins that you can feel really good about, especially if you've identified that clear plan, you've got your KPIs, you know how you're measuring success. in the short term, about 3 to 6 months, you're going to see some visibility increases. You're going to start seeing engagement. You're going to start seeing people looking at the content and the insights, and they're really just starting to notice and starting to evaluate, is this somebody that has a unique perspective of value? Is this person someone maybe I need to keep an eye on because this resonates with me? Then you go more of that midterm time where you're starting to lay the true foundation of credibility. And you're starting, over 6 to 12 months, you're seeing that trust established. People are not just noticing your comments, they're looking for your content and perspective. And they're starting to see, I really do align with what they're saying. This is certainly a person that I would identify as having a trustworthy perspective and opinion, and someone that I want to continue to follow. The long term is where you start getting that sustained level of influence, that golden level of you're getting recognized in your communities and your industries as a thought leader, as someone who has true influence and a capability to not just comment on trends, but to identify them and to be able to speak to them and break it down to people. You become that resource. And this is long term. This is depending on what the topic is, depending on what the market and landscape looks like. This could be 12 months or this could be years, but it's all about maintaining that consistency so that your thought leaders are continuing to show up, continuing to back up what they're saying, and build that credibility and trust ongoing. And it gives you a lot of opportunity as a brand if you're aligning with your thought leaders and positioning them, because they're kind of those visible mastheads, and they really do kind of guide conversations. And that leads to some leads that turns into sales for your company and invitations and partnerships for even bigger and better opportunities.
Unfortunately, that was the bummer slide, that we all want an overnight success. But unfortunately, like a lot of things in PR, and certainly this is true for search engine optimization too, is it's going to take time. It's going to take consistency, dedication, and effort to see those results, but we know that it's worth it. So we do have a couple questions already. So one of them on the, I don't have a year to wait. What can I do to jumpstart it? So um, really starting to look at immediately taking that assessment that you have, figuring out who can you start positioning today. Maybe you have kind of two tiers to it of like, who do I have today who's already media trained, who's ready to do presentations, who's anxious to share their thoughts, and who's already been asking, how do I get this out there? Maybe starting with a path forward with them of identifying how do you use your existing channels today to get them out there. Maybe they're already doing speaking engagements and it's working with them to turn those into blog posts or getting podcast appearances that align with the information they're already sharing. So really trying to think about, how can I get started on it and get some of those quick wins while you build out the rest of your program? It's still going to take a few months to see results, but I think that could be a great way to have that proof of concept as you're starting to build a bigger, more longer term programs.
Trust takes time. So does thought leadership.
True. True. Another question that we have is, what advice and ideas do you have about how to publish thought leadership content as own content if maybe media outlets have been a little bit unreliable in their publishing? So one of those strategies is using Business Wire and other wire services to publish your thought leadership. It does work wonders when it comes to SEO, and we do see some really good click through, not just from journalists, but from prospects. So for example, if you're working on a white paper and you've been having trouble having media get attention to it, thinking, how can I use a wire service to amplify that SEO? But perhaps it's looking for a partner on your white paper. Maybe it's a media outlet, like a trade media outlet, who can lend their credibility to it, or it's starting to look at a partner on it. Is there another brand or is there another organization that could come alongside you and together you're publishing it? Maybe they've got a little bit more credibility that you're sort of borrowing from them while you're creating your own path to thought leadership. Anything you would add to that one, Shannon?
I think there's paid opportunities that you can use to also ensure that your thought leadership content gets out there. In addition to wires, you can pay for like sponsored content that does end up reaching your target audience, and it's going to ensure that you're hitting your target audience at the right time. So yes, that means that you have to allocate some advertising dollars to it. But when it comes to your thought leadership, if that is your guiding direction for, your marketing communications, then you want to ensure that you can control timing and that you can control the full message. So thinking about some other kind of sponsored opportunities is another avenue that you can explore.
One thing that I forgot to mention on that one too, in addition to what Shannon shared about advertorials, which is a great opportunity and sponsored content, thinking about your social media. If you're a business-to-business organization, are you pushing it on LinkedIn? And are you using LinkedIn sponsored posts to maybe amplify or extend your audience? And also, are you feeding that information over to your sales team for them to use it in their sales prospect calls? Figuring out what channels am I totally in control of, and how do I leverage those to get additional eyeballs on my thought leadership?
Great point.
Another question, this one's about webinars. Can you invite external experts to, for example, participate in a webinar with you to leverage their thought leadership to position for your own benefit? Yes, absolutely. I love this strategy. We see a lot of companies do it more from if they're hosting a webinar about their features and benefits, that they're inviting a customer, particularly a well-known customer, to come on and talk about how do they use it, why do they use it, how does it fit with their business strategy, and that you're borrowing their name recognition and their expertise. Typically, there's other people in their category who would be very interested in knowing the behind the scenes. You're lifting the curtain and giving a little behind the scenes sneak peek. And surprise, surprise, your company is the one providing that secret sauce to them. So, having that partnership on something like a webinar could be really great. Shannon,
Yeah.
what thoughts do you have on it?
We typically see, whether it's, maybe it is a third party expert that you're pulling in, somebody that is a bit more influential. If it's not a customer, you're really looking at offering them the benefit of reaching your audience. And also they're using this as a reputation builder, but it's a much more controlled environment than even doing media interviews, where some customers or some partners may not be comfortable just having someone throw random questions at them. A webinar is going to give them a lot more control. So thinking about, what might be their points of resistance to partnering with you for thought leadership. Sometimes it's, if you're working with an analyst, you might need to get some sort of a paid relationship involved, or you may also need to be having some consistent touch points with them. But there is a lot of benefit to selling someone a thought leadership partnership and positioning their expertise alongside yours to reach your audience as well.
Great questions. Any other questions we want to cover? I know we've got two more in the Q&A. One is about their founder is the only spokesperson, but they're not always available or available now. How do you sort of get their buy-in or approval to broaden out your subject matter experts? Shannon, do you want me to take this one first?
Sure, go for it.
I'm a big fan of the frank conversations. So I think having a candid and loving conversation with that founder or CEO to explain what you're trying to do to help grow the organization and some ways that maybe they could partner with you on it or get their take on who would they feel comfortable carrying forward that brand story. Or if you're bringing some ideas for thought leadership and suggesting some other subject matter experts, what do they think? Kind of you're getting their buy-in, you're asking for their opinion, and you're sort of making that idea a shared idea. Because if you do it without having that conversation, they may think you're just going rogue and trying to cut them out of the process, and nobody likes that. So wanting to make sure that you're trying to involve them in the conversation, you're trying to involve them in the process, and including their insight and expertise about who do they trust to carry forward that message. Because I think with that type of approach, you're going to get a lot further with getting that CEO or founder's buy-in on it.
Yeah, there's a lot of benefits to having more than one dedicated thought leader in your organization, and they don't necessarily have to be driving to a very different messaging line. They can be supporting your overarching thought leader's perspective with maybe more drilled down insight based on their unique experience. But it's similar to kind of having those conversations to understand, here's what we're trying to accomplish. Here's where you have a very specific role, assuring your current thought leader and leader that they are going to continue to offer unique insight, but that they're really just going to get some additional support. They're going to get some complementary lift from some of the other thought leaders' activities. It's a lot of pressure when you only have one subject matter expert that has to carry that line. So looking at how you can tell your story across numerous people can offer a lot of benefits.
Awesome. Well, that's all we see in the Q&A. Shannon and I will be on for just a few more minutes, but thank you so much for joining us today. This is one of our favorite topics to talk about. So be on the lookout in your email, the email that you use to register for the webinar. Check that one by end of day tomorrow. You'll see a copy of the recording in there. But feel free to reach out to Shannon or I if you would like to kind of talk about how this strategy could work in your organization. We're happy to kind of get a little bit deeper into how that customized approach could work for you. So don't hesitate to reach out. We're here as resources for you, and always happy to talk all things thought leadership. So thank you. We hope to see you in a future webinar.